At a beach cafe in Santa Monica, a fateful encounter is touching the hearts of many. One warm afternoon in late summer, businessman David Carter was having an important business meeting at a beachside cafe in Santa Monica. The crisp ocean breeze blew in as David, who runs a hardware store in Pasadena, prepared for the meeting like he always did. Just as the meeting was picking up momentum, a boy about 12 years old entered the cafe carrying a basket of homemade snacks. The boy, Ryan, tried to sell his snacks to the cafe patrons, but most shook their heads in refusal. With one last glimmer of hope, he approached David's table and asked in a timid voice, "Sir, would you like to buy some dried fruit that my mom made herself?" David, clearly annoyed by the interruption during his busy meeting, reached for his wallet to hand over some money quickly. But as he opened his wallet, an old photograph caught his eye, freezing him in place. The boy's eyes widened as he saw the photo and gasped, "Hey, that's my mom." David's hand stopped midair. The picture in his wallet was of his first love, Emily Johnson, the girl he'd silently admired during their childhood at the orphanage. In an instant, David's mind raced back 20 years. Memories of Emily's warm smile, her kind words, and the pain of leaving her behind flooded his thoughts. His voice trembled as he asked, "Is your mom's name Emily Johnson?" Ryan nodded eagerly. "Yeah, that's her." Tears welled up in David's eyes. Even after all these years, Emily had remained in his heart. David immediately ended his meeting, apologizing to his business partners, and stood up. "I have something urgent to take care of," he said as he took Ryan's hand and asked, "Can you take me to her?" Ryan looked at him curiously. "Sir, do you know my mom?" David nodded silently, unable to speak as a storm of emotions, joy, anxiety, and anticipation rushed through him. Ryan nodded and led David out of the cafe toward the nearby boardwalk. The sun was beginning to set over the Santa Monica Pier, casting golden light on the bustling crowds of tourists, but David saw and heard none of it. All he could focus on was the sound of Ryan's footsteps in front of him and the echo of his own racing heartbeat. The rhythmic crashing of the waves blended with his pulse as he followed the boy down the narrow streets, leading away from the beach. "That's my mom's food truck," Ryan said, pointing ahead. David saw a modest blue and white food truck parked at the corner of a quiet street. It was closed for the moment, but just seeing it made David's heart pound in his chest. Memories of Emily's bright smile, the way she had always comforted him during difficult times at the orphanage, came rushing back. He stopped walking for a moment, pulling out his wallet once more to look at the photo. In the picture, 20-year-old Emily was laughing under a sunny sky, her eyes filled with light. Will she still have that same smile? David whispered to himself before following Ryan again. His steps felt heavy as they approached the food truck, but there was no turning back now. "Mom," Ryan knocked on the side of the food truck. "It's me. I brought someone with me." Inside, David heard soft footsteps before the door creaked open. The woman who appeared was exactly as he remembered. Her hair was shorter, her face slightly lined from time, but her eyes were still warm and clear. Emily's eyes locked onto David's, and for a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. "David?" Emily's voice trembled with disbelief, the dishcloth slipping from her hand. David's throat tightened. "Emily," he finally said, his voice shaking. Ryan looked between them, confused. "Mom, do you know him?" Emily nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving David's. "Ryan, could you give us a moment, sweetheart?" Emily asked, her voice soft but unsteady. Ryan hesitated but eventually stepped outside, leaving the two alone in the food truck. As Ryan left, an awkward silence filled the small space inside the food truck. David glanced around, taking in the neatly arranged utensils and spotless counters, imagining the life Emily had built for herself here. Emily motioned toward a small stool. "Please sit." Her hands trembled slightly as she poured a glass of water, her emotions barely held in check. "I never thought we'd meet again," Emily said, her voice tinged with a mix of shock and sadness. David reached into his wallet, pulling out the photo. "I've carried this with me for 20 years. Emily looked at the picture and gave a bittersweet smile. Those were simpler times, weren't they? David studied her face closely, noticing the small signs of exhaustion, the lines around her eyes, the roughness of her hands, evidence of the hard life she'd endured. "Emily, what happened?" David asked gently. Emily paused, taking a deep breath, and glanced out the window where Ryan was playing by the beach. "When I left the orphanage, I had nothing, no family, no education, no support," she began. "At first, I washed dishes at a diner, but it wasn't enough to survive. I ended up working at a club for 3 years just to make ends meet." David's face tightened, his heart breaking as he imagined what she must have endured. Emily smiled sadly. "Every night, I felt like I was losing a part of myself. Then one day, I found out I was pregnant." Her voice trembled. "I didn't even know who Ryan's father was, but he became my reason to keep going." David reached out, wanting to comfort her, but hesitated. "You raised him all on your own?" Emily nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Everyone told me to give him up, but I couldn't. He was the only thing I had that felt truly mine. That's when I left the city and came to Santa Monica. I bought this food truck and started over." David was silent, overwhelmed with emotion. He had spent the past 2 decades building a stable life, while Emily had fought to survive every day. "You've done an incredible job," he said quietly. "Ryan is a wonderful boy." Emily looked at him with tired eyes but smiled softly. "Thank you, but there were so many times I felt like I failed him. I couldn't give him what other kids had, no fancy schools, no stable home. But he never complained." David's heart ached as he listened. "Emily, you've been so strong. You've raised him into someone you can be proud of." For the first time, tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't want you to see me like this, so broken." David knelt in front of her, gently taking her hand. "You're not broken. You're the strongest person I know. I'm proud of you, Emily. You've always been someone special to me." Emily's lip quivered as she tried to hold back more tears. "But I'm not the girl you used to know anymore." David tightened his grip on her hand. "That doesn't matter. I've been waiting for this moment for 20 years. I'm ready to accept everything about you, just as you are." Tears streamed down Emily's face as she looked into David's eyes, realizing that, for the first time in years, someone truly understood her pain. "But what about Ryan?" she whispered. "He doesn't even know his father." David glanced out the window at Ryan, who was running along the beach, the fading sunlight casting a golden glow on his face. "Ryan is an incredible kid, and if you'll let me, I'd like to be there for both of you from now on." Emily's eyes widened in surprise. "David, are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," David said firmly. "I don't want to miss another moment with you two." A long pause hung between them as Emily processed his words, her heart torn between hope and fear. Finally, she nodded, her lips trembling. "Then let's try together." At that moment, the door swung open and Ryan walked in, holding a small seashell.
"Mom."
"Look what I found," he said excitedly, but then stopped when he noticed her tear-streaked face. "Are you crying again, Mom? Did I do something wrong?" Ryan asked with a worried look. Emily quickly wiped her tears and pulled him into a hug. "No, sweetie. You didn't do anything wrong. These are happy tears." David crouched down next to Ryan. "Hey, Ryan, would it be okay if I helped your mom a little?" Ryan tilted his head curiously. "Help her how?" David smiled. "For starters, maybe we could turn her food truck into a bigger restaurant. And I could help you with school too." Ryan's eyes lit up. Really? I could go to the same summer camp as my friends? Of course, David said with a nod. And anything else you dream of. Ryan beamed and gave David a tight hug. That sounds awesome. Emily, watching the scene unfold, felt her heart soften. For the first time in years, a genuine smile broke across her face, a smile filled with hope. David gently ruffled Ryan's hair. But you'll have to promise me one thing. Work hard in school, and I'll help make all your dreams come true. Ryan nodded eagerly. Deal. Emily couldn't help but laugh through her tears. I can't believe this is happening. David, are you really ready for all of this? David took her hand again. Emily, I've been ready for 20 years. Now it's time for us to build something new together. From that day on, everything began to change. With David's help, Emily's small food truck transformed into a cozy cafe on Main Street, a place known for its warm atmosphere and homemade recipes. Locals and tourists alike filled the cafe, eager to try her signature dishes. Emily's Kitchen quickly became a popular spot in Santa Monica, and the cafe's success brought new energy and life into Emily's world. Meanwhile, David moved from Pasadena to Santa Monica to be closer to Emily and Ryan. Though it meant handing his hardware business over to his brother, David felt it was worth every sacrifice. In the evenings, the three of them would sit together at the cafe after closing, sharing stories about their day. Mom, guess what? I got an A on my science test today, Ryan would say proudly. David smiled and gave him a high five. That's my boy. You're going to do great things, Ryan. Emily watched them with warmth in her eyes, realizing that for the first time in years, she wasn't alone. Their bond deepened with each passing day, and soon, Ryan began to see David as more than just a family friend. David, Ryan asked one evening, "Can I call you Dad?" David's heart swelled. "I'd be honored, buddy." From that moment on, the three of them became a true family, filling the voids in each other's hearts. As time went on, the cafe flourished even more. Emily's confidence grew, and she found joy not only in cooking but in seeing her customers smile. David supported her every step of the way, using his business skills to expand the cafe's reach. Ryan thrived in school, excelling in his classes and making new friends, with David and Emily cheering him on at every milestone. One crisp fall afternoon, the family decided to take a walk along the beach, just like they had on the day it all began. David carried his camera with him. "How about we take our first official family photo?" They stood together, the ocean breeze in their hair, and smiled as David snapped the picture. In the photo, Emily's eyes sparkled with happiness, Ryan's laughter was frozen in time, and David's warm gaze captured everything he dreamed of for 20 years. As they walked back to the cafe, Emily held David's hand, her heart light for the first time in years. "I never thought I'd have this, a real family," she said softly. David smiled. "It was always meant to happen. We just had to find each other again." Ryan ran ahead, waving at them. "Come on, you two. Let's get ice cream." Laughter echoed across the beach as they followed him, their footsteps blending together in the sand. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the water, as if blessing their new beginning. Over time, the cafe continued to flourish, becoming a beloved part of the Santa Monica community. Locals knew it not just for its food, but for the love and warmth that radiated from the family who ran it. Ryan grew into a confident, determined young man with big dreams. "I want to be a doctor," he told David and Emily one evening. "I want to help people, just like you helped us." Emily's eyes filled with pride.
"You can do anything, Ryan."
"We'll always be here to support you." David nodded. "And I'll be right by your side every step of the way." Years passed, but the bond between the three only grew stronger. David and Emily became known as pillars of the community, their story inspiring others to believe in second chances and the power of love. One summer evening, they gathered at the cafe for a small celebration. Ryan had just received a college acceptance letter, and the family couldn't be prouder. "To new beginnings," David said, raising a glass. "And to family," Emily added with a smile. As they clinked their glasses, David looked around at the people who had become his world. Emily, the girl he'd loved for decades, and Ryan, the son he never expected but loved with all his heart. "We've come a long way," he said quietly. Emily squeezed his hand. "And there's so much more ahead." Outside, the ocean waves lapped gently against the shore, just as they always had, a steady reminder of life's constant ebb and flow. From that moment on, the three of them faced every challenge together. Their journey hadn't been easy, but it had made them stronger, shaping them into a family bound by love, resilience, and unshakable hope. And in Santa Monica, where the ocean breeze whispered through the streets, their story became a symbol of how life's unexpected turns can lead to the most beautiful destinations. A few years later, the cafe had become more than just a place to eat. It was a hub of warmth and community. Photos of David, Emily, and Ryan hung on the walls, capturing their life's milestones, family beach trips, Ryan's school achievements, and the cafe's grand reopening after its expansion. Ryan, now a college student, returned home every holiday to help at the cafe. "This place feels like magic," he often said to his friends. "It's where everything started for us." Emily, more confident than ever, had become known for her homemade pies and welcoming smile. Customers often stayed longer just to chat with her and hear the story of how the cafe and her life changed forever. One chilly winter evening, David and Emily stood at the cafe's door, watching the holiday lights twinkle down Main Street. The air was crisp, filled with the sound of Christmas carolers and laughter from passers-by. "Can you believe how far we've come?" David asked, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Emily leaned into him, her breath visible in the cold air. "I think about it every day. It's like we were given a second chance at life." Just then, the door flew open and Ryan walked in, carrying a stack of books and a grin. "I'm back. And guess what? I aced my final exams." David laughed, clapping him on the back. "I never doubted it for a second." Emily hugged him tightly. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." The three of them sat down at their favorite table, sharing stories and hot cocoa as the cafe buzzed with life around them. In that moment, everything felt perfect, a reflection of how far they had come and the bright future ahead. Later that night, as David locked up the cafe, he paused and looked back at the cozy, familiar space. "It's more than just a cafe," he said to himself. "It's where our new life began." Outside, the waves lapped softly against the shore, the moonlight reflecting on the water like a promise of endless possibilities. David turned back toward the street, where Emily and Ryan waited for him. "Ready to head home?" Emily asked with a smile. David nodded, taking her hand. "Always." And as they walked together under the twinkling lights of Santa Monica, they knew that no matter what the future held, they would always have each other. Family, love, and a second chance that had turned into a lifetime of joy.